Well, let's get into the pleasantries and officially welcome you to the Hard to Kill podcast, folks. Just so you know, like, this is a rolling start here. Me and Will already have a bit of history here, so getting him on the podcast is a real hoot because we're going to get into why he's here. But before we do that, let's do some intros, Will. And if you'll allow me, I'll go over your illustrious career because it's pretty cool in as brief a format as I can. So, Will's a former Navy SEAL. Now you're the third Navy SEAL now I've had on the pods. Just like I'm
curious who the other
Canadian
two were.
pod. It's actually John McCaskill and
okay. I know John.
Kurt Parsley.
I do not know Kurt.
Sleep Doc. Awesome, dude. So now officially you're number 3. You had a remarkable military background. You served for 26 years, including multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. After your retirement in 2018, struggled with depression and turned to prescription drugs and booze. However, he found a new purpose after discovering CBD, which led him to start his company, Naked Warrior Recovery CBD. During this career, you honed your leadership skills, cultivated a strong mindset, and gained invaluable experience in high-pressure situations as a sniper instructor, leading teams on operations ranging from protecting the interim Iraqi elected officials to direct action missions in Baghdad and Afghanistan, as well as undersea missions that were required to be approved by the President of the United States of America. That's freaking cool. Your expertise in leadership and mindset has been sought by organizations ranging from small universities to Fortune 500 companies. You draw on your experience to provide practical advice on how to cultivate a leadership style that inspires and motivates others, and how to develop the resilience needed to succeed in challenging environments. So, Will, welcome to the show officially. And I can't wait to have a further discussion about your career and why you've got into the CBD world.
Thank you, sir. I'm stoked to be here. I'm stoked to finally connect with you after our last meeting.
After taking my soul, which is a perfect segue. So, folks, let's get right into it. This is me and Will's initial contact. Well, initial
froze. Somebody
face-to-face contact.
You or me?
Somebody froze?
Okay. We're back. We're back.
You got me now? We're back?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Folks, this is me and Will's first contact, like physical contact. So bear with me here while I pull this up, make sure I don't screw up this tech bit here. So I'm going to pull up a little video from the MDK Project Instagram account.
Quit when shit gets hard. Quit now.
That's me, by the way, with my face in the dirt, and that's Will standing above me. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes.
Yeah, I give you a chance. I totally give you a chance right here.
I'm telling
you, like, as long as you keep moving.
No.
See, if you would have started moving right there, I would not have touched you.
When you start fighting,
but you didn't.
I'll stop dragging you to the bottom of the hill.
And then you started kicking your legs, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll drag him a little more, and then I'll let him go.
So, folks, we'll get into the context of what this was in a little bit, but this was I guess a gut check. And on that hill I'm climbing, I'm toast. I'm like, fuck.
It's a very steep hill too.
It doesn't look steep because I saw it online before. I was like, this isn't that steep. Like, I'll be fine. I'll be all right. Turns out it took my soul and ruined my entire day, ruined 5 months of training. But like in true troop fashion, I was like, you know what, man? This isn't going to end me, and I'm glad that we connected. And we actually connected when I left. Okay, when I was like, man, I'm done, I'm toast. Like, I got to ring the bell. I got to get out of here. And I remember having the conversation. It was a great conversation. And being in an instructor role in the past, I know, it's a game. It's theatrics. And so when you're like, dude, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh man, I'm toast, man. I can't keep up. And then we had a great conversation, and I could tell right off the bat, like you're a cool dude. And so we started talking about health, and we started talking about like longevity and, protocols that you're doing and stuff like that. I'm like, it's be a cool guy to have on the podcast later. So now we're here. And Will, I guess let's get started, man. What brought you to, let's say the MDK project? Because I think most people are in the dark as to like why this project exists, what this project is about, and what your role is in it. So we'll start there, and then we'll move on to your career and what got you into the SEALs.
So it's a little bit of a longer story, but I'll try to cut it down. So how I got involved with the project is when I retired from the SEAL teams in 2018, I felt like I lost my mission, my purpose, and my team. And I had a pretty badass mission, purpose, and team being in the SEAL teams. Like I had men that would hold me accountable no matter what. You know, I also live on a rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I live in Hawaii, which everyone's like, oh, it's a paradise. And it is. However, I don't have like a great network. And, you know, leaving the SEAL teams, even though there's SEALs here on the island, you know, we do get along great at work, but then we have differences outside of work. And so we have different professional interests. After the SEAL teams, there's a handful of guys, you know, most of them are still involved in some sort of governmental work, and I'm overdoing government work. I did that for my entire adult life, and I don't want to do it anymore. And so in my process of, had I gone right into some sort of governmental job right out of the military, I would be doing that right now, and I would not be on this podcast, and we would not have met, and I would not have been on that hill and all that other good stuff. But, you know, I got out, I went through lots of different phases. And one of the things I wanted to do, like people were like, hey, you need to have an online presence. I had zero because I was in the SEAL teams. And so I got on social media, which started to kind of kick off. And I reached out to some guys that I knew from once upon a time in the SEAL teams. Ray Care was one of those people. He was in my very first SEAL team, also known as Ray Cash Care, former Navy SEAL, if you ever look him up. And he was one of the beginning. He was one of the founders of the project with Bedros. And so I reached out to Ray and I was like, hey, you know, he was going to the SHOT Show in Vegas. I was going to try and figure out how to get some clients in this consulting business that I started. And really, I'm just trying to connect with guys. And he was like, and maybe I was going to go do some work for the agency, which he was doing at the time. And I was just lost, like most veterans, just completely lost. You know, I saw that Bedros came out with Ray posted in his Instagram. Again, I was very new to Instagram. I had no idea how to use it or anything else. He posted something about this book from Bedros Keuilian. So I went and read the book called Man Up. Then Ray was Bedros was having an event in San Diego. My former mother-in-law was sick at the time. And so with family, we were in North San Diego County, and I was like, I called up Ray. I was like, hey man, when are you doing this event with Bedros? Because I just want to come down and like hang out and maybe work out with you or whatever. And he was like, hey, here's the thing, and actually, I will get you on as one of my VIP guests because he's granted like 2 or 4 or something 5 VIP tickets, and so I got to go to all the VIP stuff. I got to meet so linked up with. I started following Bedros, and then Bedros put in his stories like, hey, I'm looking for an alpha to run one of my companies, blah, blah, blah. You probably don't exist, but like drop your name and, contact info in my stories or in my messaging, and we'll get back to you. And I applied like 2 or 3 times. No one ever got back to me. And then I was with Ray one day, and I was like, Ray, what's with your boy Bedros, who never replies to his stories or his messages? He's like, I don't know. Let me text him right now. And then he was like, apparently, long story short, my stories were going into his super junk, or my messages to him were going into like his super junk. So he would never saw them. And so later on, like that August, Bedros was having the Empire Business Summit, August or September. And so I came out, I watched Ray speak. I came out as a VIP guest. I met with Bedros, and I was like, hey man, why don't you ever answer your damn, like, I don't know Bedros from anybody. I just like everyone else who's famous, air quotes there on social media. Yeah. Everyone thinks they know them because they watch their content and all this other stuff. And they're like, oh, I know everything about you. I resonate with you, all these other things. And I resonated with a lot of things that Bedros said. And so eventually I met Bedros. Ray got up on stage. He spoke. He was like, any SEALs in the house? And I was like, yeah, right here. Ray already knew. There was like 6 of us in the room. They're like, whatever, 1,000 people. And then who here has ever fast roped onto a submarine? Yeah, that me. Who's here ever like, cleared buildings in, like, he's just like going through, like, he's trying to give us a shout out and also like talk about how cool he is. And so after that, this was after I like walked up to Bedros. I was like, hey man, you don't have the fucking common decency to answer your messages. He's like, who are you? And what are you? What? Hey, how you doing? And so after Ray finished, Bedros came down. He was like, you're a Navy SEAL? I was like, yeah. He was like, well, sorry about that. And if I'd have known that, maybe we'd have had a different conversation. But he tried to unfollow me on Instagram, or tried to pull me out of his spam, and couldn't do it. So he just gave me his number. And then we had dinner that night. And then he flew with his family out here to Hawaii. For every Christmas, he would go to Maui for Christmas. And so he texted me. He was like, hey, what island do you live on again? I was like, Oahu. He's like, I'm on Maui. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I stop in and like we hang out for like, a little while? He's like, yeah, fly on over. I flew over, met at like 5 a.m., had coffee, sat down for like 3 hours, got to know one another, and we just kept in touch. And then like right after that, COVID happened. And some other stuff that we'll talk about later on the CBD side also happened at that Empire Business Summit. And then COVID happened. Bedros had a business training thing, like a 1 week thing. And I'm like, I had just started my company, Naked Warrior Recovery, and I had no idea how to like market, how to do anything. And the other thing is because it's CBD, everyone's like, run ads on social media. Well, social media does not like CBD. Like I lost four Facebook accounts and 3 Instagram accounts before I realized that they considered it to be like meth or child porn or something like that. I was like, what the but never mind that Meta, Facebook still took my money, even though my accounts were deleted. So anyway, fast forward, I've been in
Zucks will get you. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I've just been engaged with Bedros. We've spoken at different events. I asked him if I could speak at one of his events, one of his coaching events that I signed up for. So we did like a year online, and like the 12th month, we did it at his headquarters in California. And I was like, hey, Bedros, do you mind if I've got this presentation? You mind if I give it to your group? He's like, hell yeah. Then I don't have to come up with content and teach. So, and I said, I promise I won't mess it up too badly. He was like, please do. Please do your thing. So I came on, presented. It went off really well the first time I'd given it to that many people. And it was only like 60 people in the room. I was fucking terrified though. Public speaking. I used to get on stage for like the first 2 years. I was like, I'm more comfortable in a gunfight than I am speaking in front of people. So if I'm like, you hear my words jittery, or I forget what my lines are or whatever, like I'm scared right now. So I hope you guys just give me a little bit of grace here. And so fast forward, some more stuff happened. We did a bunch of other work together. And then Ray was moving on to other bigger and better things. Bedros turned to me and was like, hey, you want to be an instructor at the project? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. I almost went through the project for the sole purpose of the network that was coming out of the project. I was watching the network of people who were coming out. And I talked to Ray about this. I'm like, Ray, I may go to the project just for the network. And Ray was like, just sit tight. You'll be fine. And so, I mean, that was a couple of years. But eventually I was like, so now I'm in that network. I'm one of the instructors at the project. And it's one of the most fulfilling things that I do. I mean, I tell people that I probably get more out of the project as an instructor than the guys going through it. Just because I have so much trauma, I have so much healing, I have so much shit in my fucking head and whatever that I'm still working through, that like I get so much healing and so many benefits from the project.
That's really interesting, especially, coming from your background and, what you've accomplished. Right. And I have to agree as a teacher. So yeah, I had a lot of time instructing when I was in the military, but I also taught high school. And I found as well that if you're in a teaching role, you tend to learn a lot more when you're actually instructing something than when you're actually in the process of learning, because you have no choice but to really up your game, because the nuances, the questions that might be asked, or even just the interactions with the students makes you that much better of a person, in my opinion. That's why I've always been in the teaching field, because I learn just as much from the students as I do from the actual content or material. So it's interesting to hear that from somebody like yourself. And just to touch on the being terrified of speaking, public speaking, I had another tier 1 guy on from JTF2, Dallas Alexander, on the podcast a few weeks ago. And he's a country music star now. And he said the scariest thing he's ever done was an open mic night. And I was just like, dude,
oh yeah,
you've done some wild ass shit in the military. He's like, yeah, man. It wasn't even close. Like there was like 6 people there, and like I was petrified. Like, and I find that funny because of what you've been able to do in your military side, but to do something like public speaking brings up fear and worry, and it's a whole other ball game. So it's cool to see, like we were talking offline, like when you start something, you're going to suck at something, and especially when you start out. But as you practice, right, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, like the fear, the anxiety. And I've seen you speak on stage. I was at Bedros Live, and you were the one that I resonated the most with, because it just for whatever reason, like I could make sense of where you're not in the military context, but where you're at in terms of like business and just the way you present yourself and the way you communicate. I felt like we had something relatively similar on that side. So I really started to look at what you're up to and how you're doing your business processes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you're all over the internet. You've done a really great job of getting out there and making sure that you establish yourself as like a key person of influence, which is a great book. If you folks that are listening and want a great book, if you're getting into business, I don't know if you've read it yourself, but that was something that guided me when I got started in business. Next, Will, like we talked about the MDK project, and like you said, you got a lot out of it. I got a ton out of it. So just for some context, I went to the project because last year, Father's Day weekend, my wife and I separated. That was, as you can imagine, super hard. So I don't know if you've gone through any separations or divorces in your life, but there's the first.
I'm going through my second divorce right now.
Okay, so
I totally get it.
Okay, so you can empathize. So it's a kick in the nuts. I've got young kids. You don't ever want to, like, you don't get married to be separated or divorced, right? So it was a kick in the nuts, and I had to move out. And in that process, I was like, I got to figure something out, man. My life is not going in the right direction. My business was in the toilet. Everything was like going downhill. And I knew I had to kind of get a grip. And so I started listening to Bedros' podcast because of a friend. He just said, hey, this is a cool podcast. Started listening to it. And he's like, stop hanging out like by yourself. Why don't you come down and hang out with a bunch of like-minded people? I was like, you know what? What do I have to lose? So I got on a flight, went to California. Then I heard you, and I heard a lot of other like high speed individuals talking there, and then just connected with a bunch of different entrepreneurs, all with the same mindset. And then the project came up, and I was like, oh shit, I like to suffer. I know that's where I kind of get into like this different headspace, and I knew I needed to focus in on something. And the fact that it was geared to building community and like becoming a better man, that really spoke to me. And I knew I needed to do something. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. So I signed up there, and that was like 5 months out. And the great thing about it was that it focused me because I needed the focus on something that was not just me being miserable. So the books we had to read, the weekly calls, the workouts, man, and it's a testament to how good the project actually is. I didn't even get through day one of the project, but I have patched up everything with my wife. I'm a better father because I'm more connected. I've worked on my anger. And just in that period alone, man, it made such a big difference. So when I showed up to the project, my goal was to like put my life back together, my marriage back together. I'd already accomplished that before I even showed up. And I mentioned that to you before I left. I'm like, look, even though I didn't get through the 3 days, this is still a resounding success. And that's the power of something like this that I really like. I really encourage other guys to go do. I know there's only one more serial coming up, but whatever it is, like find that community of like-minded folks that actually want to suffer and actually want to be better, and stick to them. So, let's then transition to the SEALs, right? Like, what got you to focus all your effort on becoming a Navy SEAL? Because I'm always curious about these stories because, comparables up here, like we have our tier 1 unit, but it's very kind of secretive. We don't really know much about it, but in the States, like I knew, like there's movies about the Navy SEAls, Charlie Sheen. I was like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if I could join. Oh, wait, I'm not American. Okay, check. So what was it for you that made you want to focus, like you're young, you're a young gun, you want to join the military, but you're like, no, I want to be the best of the best. What was that process like, and how'd you get through?
Well, I guess, I grew up in a little town in, nowhere land, Mississippi. Like if you think about Canada, you got Montreal and Toronto are like the main cities, and everything else is just super rural. And because I have been to Canada, quite a few times, I was dirt poor growing up, dirt poor, like free lunches, 1st through 12th grade. I was, had a very mediocre at best mindset. I didn't think I was very smart. Like I graduated high school with a 2.33333333 GPA, which is, barely a C average, maybe, I guess.
It's not great.
And
it's not great.
I got by, but I always knew I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. And I didn't know what that was. I was heavily involved in the Boy Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout. I went to a national jamboree, which is a worldwide really event where Boy Scouts from all over the world come together in this one place in Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia, which I later trained at after I graduated SEAL training. You know, I met a kid at that jamboree. He was my tent mate, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to, you know, after I graduate from high school, I'm going to go to the Naval Academy. I'm going to fly F-14 Tomcats like the movie Top Gun, and I'm going to become a Navy SEAL. I'm like, that's cool. I want to do that. What is a Navy SEAL? I had no idea. But of course, my role models growing up were, they, you know, like we talked about earlier, G.I. Joe, Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, John Wayne. You know, he was a Green Beret in the movie Green Berets, John Rambo, all those movies. Like, I was like, that's what I want. Whatever that is, I want some of that. And I wanted to go to Vietnam. I wanted to fight in the jungle. I wanted to do all these other things. And I grew up hunting, and I was actually shot while hunting. So when I was in combat, I wasn't too worried about getting shot.
You literally got shot while you were hunting?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
Yeah, if you go back to that, you don't have to do it right now, but if you go back to the MDK page and you see all of us that, you know, we're all with our shirts off after we just finished grappling, you'll see like a big scar on my stomach, like a 12-inch scar. That was from, you know, getting shot. I got shot with a shotgun by my great uncle while turkey hunting, and 2 pellets went between my ribs, into my colon. I still have like 30 something pellets in my body, but they caused some internal bleeding, and so they had to go in and like pull all my guts out, find the 2 little holes that I was bleeding from, fix those, and then, you know, stapled me back shut. I don't think I've ever told that story on a podcast before, and this is, you know, I'm well over 500 right now. Maybe I'll tell that on my podcast one day.
That's story number one. That's story number one. Shit.
And but anyway, I was like, yeah, I want to join the Navy, but I also swore that I would never join the Navy. Every man in my family, except for one, I think, had all joined the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy. My uncle was. All these men were in the Navy, and I'm like, I don't want to be in the Navy. And there was a naval air station in my town. And, you know, I would see these young kids like straight out of boot camp, and they're just acting like a bunch of idiots. I'm like, I'm never going to be one of those people. They have the ugliest uniforms. They ride on these big, great things that float out there in the ocean. I don't want any part of any of that. But you can't be a Navy SEAL unless you join the Navy. So I came back from that jamboree. The Navy recruiter called me. He's like, hey, man, have you ever thought about joining the Navy? I was like, yeah, I want to go to the Naval Academy. I want to fly F-14 Tomcats, and I want to be a Navy SEAL. He was like, awesome. Why don't you come on down here and
sign here
and yeah, and let's have a conversation. So I went down there. You know, I didn't go to the Naval Academy, nor did I become a pilot, but I did become a Navy SEAL. And so I made some tactical errors along the way, though. In my 26 years in the Navy, so the first, you know, I went to boot camp. Then I went in the Navy. You have to go to a technical school, which I was like, oh, I'll go become a gunner's mate, which sounds like you work on guns, right? Mm-hmm. You work on the big guns that are on those big floaty things out there in the water. So has nothing to do with like, you know, small arms or anything like that. And I took another school because I thought you take this other school, get in better shape to go to BUD/S. Well, what I didn't know is I had 24 months of obligated service to a ship in Yokosuka, Japan after taking that school. So when it came time for me to go to BUD/S, the guy who tells you where you can go and when you can do it, you know, puts you in your next set of orders. He was like, you're not going to become a Navy SEAL. You are too critical to the Navy and that job that you did, that school that you went to, and I will not release you no matter what. No, I don't care who says anything. So I was getting letters of recommendation. I was like, I wouldn't take no for an answer. And so I just kept asking people. And eventually one day, the chief of naval operations, who's the most senior guy in the Navy, came to my ship in Yokosuka, Japan. He didn't go to any other ship. He came to my ship and he had CNOs call and he said, hey, this is my vision of the Navy. Does anyone have any questions? And I raised my hand. I was like, oh, I got one. He was like, yeah, I was the second person he asked. I said, I joined the Navy to become a Navy SEAL. My detailer says he won't let me go because I'm too critical. I think I deserve a chance to go. What do you think? He stops, he pauses.
You said that? How many people were in the room?
Almost like it was like 250 people. And so he turns to my commanding officer and he says, is he a good guy? And he was like, yeah, he was a sailor of the quarter this quarter, which is like employee of the month. He turns back to me. He's like, check, you'll be in the first class after your PRD, which is planned rotational date. 6 weeks later, I'm off to California to start SEAL training. So, and the other thing that happened is
a brick.
They were super supportive. They were all super supportive.
Really?
Because I actually told
awesome.
my commanding officer before, I was like, hey, I'm going to ask the CNO if he'll let me go to BUD/S. He's like, okay, check. And then after that, after the ceremony was over, the senior enlisted guy, the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, came down to me and he was like, took my name and social. And he was like, you know, he's like, the easy part's over. Now it's up to you. I tried it. It wasn't for me. So good luck. I was like, damn, this is real. And so I called Washington, where the detailers were the next night. I called the SEAL detailers, and I said, "Hey, have you heard anything about my orders?" They're like, "What's your name?" Branum. And I was like, "They're like, yeah, we mailed your orders out this morning." This was pre-internet, like everything. This was like within I'm on the other side of the world, and they like took my name. I asked a question. They took my name and social, and 4 hours later, I had orders being mailed to me. Like again, this was like 94 or 95, something like that. I don't remember, 93, something. So anyway, way pre-internet, all that stuff out there. So, so yeah, anyway, so getting to buds, I didn't there was no other thing that I wanted to do in my life. All I wanted to do was become a Navy SEAL. What do I need to do to make that happen? And so that's the mindset that got me through training. That's the mindset that got me through everything that I've done in my life. And it's because I had a very specific mission. I had a very specific purpose of something I wanted to do. And I didn't understand it back then. It was what I have sort of put together now. Back then, it was like, there's nothing else that I want. And you can apply this to anything, business, this relationship, this, whatever it is. Like when you apply yourself, people say you put your effort into the things that you actually want to do. And so what I really wanted to do was become a Navy SEAL. If I really want to have a relationship with my wife, I'm going to focus on that relationship. If I want to have a relationship with my kids, I will focus on that relationship. If I want to have a badass business, I'm going to focus on that business. If I want to have a healthy body and mind, I'm going to focus on my body and mind. But it's very hard to do that now, I think, because we have so many distractions and we don't have a lot of focus. Yeah. And if we can make ourselves focus on the things that are important to us, then we can achieve pretty much anything that's out there. There's nothing that's not achievable. There's these cliches about burn the boats and all that other crap. Yeah, but why are you burning the boats? Do you really believe in the thing that you're doing? If you do, then it doesn't fucking matter if you have a boat or not. You're just going to keep figuring out how to get there. You're going to pivot and pivot and pivot and work around it until you eventually win. Yeah, and don't expect to win right away. And it was kind of like what we were saying earlier, just suck.
Right.
Just suck. If you're going to do anything, especially if it's new, you're going to suck. And that's okay. Well, if you can be comfortable sucking, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think that's often, folks that don't take action, I'm guilty. I'm not speaking on a soapbox here. It's that.
So am I. I'm 100% guilty.
It's that fear of, well, I'm not going to, I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I to start a business? Who am I to, start a podcast? Nobody's going to listen to me. So why even start? And it's being able to just kind of dissolve the ego, be okay with the fact that things are not going to be good. Like if you go to my first episode, I didn't even have a mic. I just talked into my laptop with my buddy in his gym with a fan going on in the background. It sucked. It sucked. But I had to get it in the can and done. Taking imperfect action is really key. And so from what I'm hearing, you got to buds. Now, from what I've learned about, doing a bit of recce on you, it didn't go so well your first time around. So can you explain that a little bit, where you found some adversity, but you're able to bounce back and effectively get on the teams? If you've been following this show for any period of time, you've likely noticed I don't typically sell a lot on this show, but that's all about the change. Your free ride is over. So let's look at my new platform. It's called Veterans Getting Fit AF, and I can't be more excited about where this is going. So right now I'm in the community tab, and this is where we share thoughts, we share wins, workouts, nutrition, advice, and we also have the 2 Million Pounds Club, where we're working towards helping 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds. On top of that, if you head to a classroom, you've got my world-renowned BEAST program. Well, maybe it's not world-renowned, but at least it's renowned enough in the veteran community that has been helping veterans lose weight and get fitter and stronger and dial in their testosterone levels for the last 4 years. It's all here. Call replays, expert advice from all the folks that I've spoken to on the podcast. I put it all here in one convenient spot. And on top of that, I'm constantly building out new courses. Because guess what? Hey, I'm a teacher. Literally a teacher with years of experience, and now I can actually deliver my knowledge in a much better scalable platform. You also have the chance to hop on calls twice a week for now with me. And since we have so few members, if you get in now, you're basically getting one-on-one coaching for only $28 a month. It's insane. If you head to the leaderboards, this is one of my favorite things. I love gamifying stuff. And if you want to have access to prizes every month, down the road, You just need to participate, like stuff, post, and you get rewarded for it. Well, I can barely speak. I'm so excited. So what do you get? You get, as soon as you sign up, a get lean for summer guide. Like, that's a no-brainer. I want to get shredded for summer too. So you get the Beast Body Blueprint, which is typically $1,800. It's not. It's only a $28 a month membership. Cancel anytime. On top of that, we're going to attack things like knee, back, shoulder pain, you name it, with my nimbleness protocol. It's all in here. And not to mention, you're going to be able to develop just a more resilient, more rock solid body that's going to be able to thrive moving into the future and connect with a bunch of other veterans that are doing the exact same thing. So hop in now. This is the introductory price. It's going to go up. So hop in now. Bring your friends. Tell them all to come in. Let's hop into this group together. Let's start sharing our knowledge, and let's start getting the veteran community harder to kill. All right, let's get into the episode. This one's a real banger, so stay tuned.
So while I was in Buds is a 6-month selection process. I was there for 13 months. I got injured 3 different times. The second time I was injured, they were going to kick me out. Like you go before a board, you go, like, the first guy is like, okay, you clearly didn't prepare well enough to be here. You're injured twice and we're kicking you out. And I was like, I went to the second guy, like my heart in my stomach. And I was like, fuck, I can't leave. Like there. And so I'm like standing there, I'm like crying, like snot bubbles, the whole thing, tears. And I tell the story about the CNO, like getting me 2 buds. And he was like, go stand outside. And I stood outside his office and he left for like 2 or 3 hours. And then he came back and he was like, what are you doing here? I said, you told me to stand outside. And while I was standing out there, my class came in and they're all wet and sandy and they look terrible. They look like shit. And I was like, all I want to do is be with those guys right now. I want to be out there suffering, just absolutely miserable. He comes back. He was like, okay, go check in and you'll be in the next class. Go over there, heal up. Had I known what I know now, I'll always, hindsight's always 20/20. I would have just stayed in that class because I didn't heal up for the next class. I was still broken. And I limped my way through all the way through Hell Week. And then during Hell Week, my leg that was fucked up healed. And like by Thursday, I was able to run. I was like, oh, my body is just like healed itself in the most brutal military training week in the world. With no sleep and no nothing else. I just like, my body was like, all right, here you go. And then, because I was, limping for like 8 weeks straight, I developed stress fractures on my other leg. But because I made it through that major milestone in training, they rolled me to the next class. So, but again, I learned tremendous lessons in mindset and resiliency and like just push through the pain. You got more than you think. Surround yourself with people who are going to raise you to a higher level, because something else happened during that Hell Week is I saw one boat crew winning more than any other boat crew. It was boat crew 3. I was in boat crew 4, and the boat crew that I originally was in, guys were quitting. Guys didn't want to put out. Guys didn't want to win. And I'm like, I want to win. You're in my way. I think if you feel like quitting, you should just get out, which is not the way I started, but I'd already been there for like 6 months at that point. And I was like ready to be moving on. And so I'm like, you guys are in my way. So eventually we reshuffled boat crews, and I wanted to make sure I was in boat crew 3 because I saw those guys winning every single race from like Sunday night to Monday. And you do boat crews by a height line. And I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3. And there's 7 guys in the boat crew. So we lined up, and I was kind of slow lining up. And I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was a little strategy here. There's boat crew 1. There's boat crew 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll be number 5. I don't care who's 6 and 7. And I got in that boat crew, and I realized that there were no like superstars in there. There was no one in there that was like an exceptional performer. But as a team, as a group, we crushed everyone. We won every single race through the rest of Hell Week until we, and then we were secured early before the rest of the class. They're like, one boat crew has put out this entire week and no other boat crew has done it. No one other boat crews have been able to beat them. And so boat crew 3, you're secured from Hell Week. So we got secured like 3 or 4 hours early. And which was awesome. Everyone else was pissed off. It was a great demoralizer for the rest of the class. And then fast forward to second phase. Yeah, second phase. Rolled back to the next class, and every about once a year the class is all fucked up, and so they get the boats again, and we go down and run down the beach, and we just I'm with a whole new class, a whole new group of people. But 5 of the 7 of us from that original boat crew were back in this next class, and we did a couple of races. And eventually the 5 of us found one another again, and we started winning races again in second phase. Like, we never talked about it. We didn't hang out as like a team or a group like outside of training. But when we came together and we worked as a team, we were badass. Like, we were unstoppable. And so that was an interesting kind of thing that I put together. Like, it's not like one person, like one superstar. If you just have the right people, the right energy, the right attitude that for the people that you surround yourself with, they don't have to be amazing. They just have to be like focused, and you have to be on the same page. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like
that's building a team.
Yeah, it's the expression, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's something about having a cohesive team that is far better than the individuals that could be studs working on their own. There's and that's entrepreneurship, right? That's literally the word in French, right? It's amongst ourselves. That's how you build a company. That's how you create a squad, a section, a platoon. It's really that ability to gel, especially in hardship, right? Which is basically what you're going through when you're going through Hell Week, right? Is to see what you're made of and see if you can actually, because you can't do it on your own.
No,
right?
absolutely
like,
not.
There's just, it's not going to happen. Cannot. And they're forcibly trying to make you realize that through that hardships that this is going to work if you want to be a lone wolf. Now, obviously, you got through your Hell Week, you got through buds. Miraculously, your leg healed, which probably a combination of youth and honestly, like, the mind is such a powerful tool, right? If you've resolved that you're not going anywhere, your body is a healing machine. And if you say, no, I need this leg to work, it's not uncommon for folks just to have things just resolve themselves, which can work both ways too. I had this weird thing, man. When I deployed to Afghanistan, my first patrol, I woke up that morning, my arm didn't work. I was like, what the hell? And it was my right arm. I was like, I can't grip anything. I couldn't lift a spoon. I was like, what's going on? It was a psychological effect that was happening on my body. I guess it was fear, anxiety, everything put together. And the manifestation of that was just, dude, we're going to end you right now. You can't go out on patrol. I was like, well, I have to. So I just said, no, well, obviously I got to do my job. So I went out and things miraculously came back online. But in terms of your career, you did 23 years, I think you said earlier in the SEAL teams. What do you think it was that allowed you to have that kind of longevity in the teams? Because obviously it's a very demanding job. I just spoke with a friend of mine who was here in Canada and on the teams as well. And, he did, I think, 15, 16 years. And like the exposure to, blast and concussive forces and jumps, it takes a toll on the body and the mind. So what was your protocol? What do you think helped with you being able to stay in so long?
I think I did not do a good job of sort of self-care while I was in the teams. I was just trying to be hard, just trying to keep up with the guy next to me. And, when I was filling these leadership roles, the pressure was even higher because, didn't want to, it was kind of like being in that boat crew. I would fall behind. I wouldn't fall behind, but I would certainly feel sorry for myself. I'm like, oh, my stomach hurts, my leg hurts. I don't feel like keeping up with the team. But if I slow down, then I'm screwing the 6 other guys that I'm with. I'm slowing them down, and I can't do that. And so, because I'm not selfish like that. And so the same thing happened, in my time in the teams. I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to like improve who I am and what I'm doing and where I'm going and all these other things. And it's and I just ignored, like, I never went to medical. I had an injury. I just kind of suffered through it and limped through it. And just how I got through buds. But that certainly took a toll on my body and my brain on, as I transitioned out, because I didn't, now I would tell you that I'm in better shape now than I was in my 40s. And I'm 50 right now. Last year I went and hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim twice. I climbed some mountain in Wyoming. I'm going to climb it. I got another mountain I'm going to climb. This year I'm going to do an ultra marathon in June as a fundraiser for a buddy of mine who has he has a nonprofit that pays off Gold Star family homes. And so I'm going to do a fundraiser for that. And it's a 1.1 mile loop. And the race is a last man standing event. And so you have 20 minutes to do 1.1 mile. And so the way the race works, you do 1.1 mile. And if you do it in 10 minutes, you got a 10-minute break. If you do it in 19 minutes, you get a 1-minute break. And so the race starts over every 20 minutes. So you can go as fast or slow as you want. You go until you can't finish that loop in 20 minutes. And let's just say that there's two people left. And each one of them finishes. And then like one person says, well, I don't want to go anymore. I'm done. There's still no winner. The last person still has to do one more loop in order to win inside of that 20 minutes. So it'll go 120 plus miles. And so it's a long grind. And so I'm not looking to like win it. I'm looking to raise as much money as I can with my body. And I'll do that in June. And it's not a flat race. It's there's a bunch of hills. It's in Tennessee. It's going to be, super humid, hot and humid, and maybe rainy and muddy. I have no idea the conditions of the day. We'll see. But, I'll go do that. I'll, give all the proceeds to my buddy's nonprofit that, pays off Gold Star Family Homes. Then in July, I'm going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And then in August, I'm going to go swim across another fundraiser, go swim across the Hudson River. It's about, I've done this 3 of the last 5 years. And it's about a 3-mile run, 2 miles swimming. There's 2 barges out in the river. So you swim out to the first barge in front of the Statue of Liberty. You get out, you do 22 pull-ups and 100 push-ups. You jump back at 22 is for the 22 veterans a day. Yeah. Swim to the next barge in front of Ellis Island, another 122. Get back in the water, swim down to Lower Manhattan, get out, rinse off, run with flags to the 9/11 Memorial, do another 122, have a little ceremony, and then go put flags on the 9/11 Memorial, and then the event is over. But so those are the things that I'm doing this year. And so, but I would argue that I'm in better shape now than I was 10, 15 years ago, even my time in the SEAL teams. But really, because my focus is different. In the SEAL teams, I'm grinding. Like I'm focusing on work. I'm focusing on hunting bad guys. I'm focusing on being in as best a shape as I can to do the job that I needed to do. Now I'm focusing on longevity. I'm focusing on performance, just performance in a different way. Focusing on looking good too.
Yeah. Well, look, Will, you look great. Okay.
Just thanks.
You're looking awesome. So, okay, I want to ask you this question before we start talking about recovery and why you got into using CBD and creating your company.
Yeah.
Because this is a question that actually my wife asked me before I went to the project. She's like, is it safe to say that you're done doing very, very hard, demanding physical things to prove something to somebody? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, it seems like you keep on doing these hard physical challenges because you're trying to prove something to somebody. When are you going to come to grips with that? Like, are you going to say like enough's enough? And I thought it was a great question because I never really asked myself that question, because it's true. I constantly do these hard challenges like the Ironman, marathons, project, because there's that little voice inside me. It's like, you haven't proved yourself enough. You got to do more. And it made me be a lot more, I guess, aware of why I'm doing challenges. And it made me realize that I was doing them for the wrong reasons. Like, I wasn't doing them because I'm like, I just like doing hard things. No, it was like, I'm trying to prove to somebody, whether it's my father, whether it's, my parents, or that, like, I'm to be respected. And I realized that's the wrong way to go about it. And so I thank my wife for that comment. So I'm curious to know, like, for you, it seems like you're doing things for the right reason. Like, your buddy has a charity. That's awesome. But have you ever fallen into that trap where, especially after you left the service, that you had to find something to kind of prove to yourself or to others that you still got it? Is that something that kind of affects you in any way?
Yeah, I think everything that I do is, I believe that, we have to create artificial hardship in our life, because life, just going back to the video that you showed earlier about, the hill climb and me dragging you down the hill, climbing that hill, that's a metaphor for life. And if you don't keep moving, you don't keep climbing up that hill, yeah, it sucks. It's hard. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. But if you stop moving, that hill is going to drag you down. So I talk a lot of times about, I think about life to be like, you're on an escalator, and that escalator is always going down. And if you don't move at least as fast as that escalator is going down, climbing up, then you're going to be going down. So you have to move a little bit faster than the escalator if you're ever going to, get up that mountain, and whatever it is. It's a never ending escalator, and it is never stopped running. And so that's, that's kind of my thought process of like dragging you down the hill. Like if you stop moving, you're going back down. That's that escalator. And so, and I think the same thing for hardships. Like you have to do, I believe, I do these hard things. Like I don't always like doing them. Like they suck. They suck. But when you finish it, you're like, I did that. That was awesome. You feel amazing. It also helps to eliminate complacency, because it's very easy for us to get complacent. I talk about killing mediocrity in my presentation. We're like, it's super easy to get stuck scrolling social media and doing stupid stuff and finding excuses to not do the things that you're supposed to do, the things that make you better every single day. And those are very small things that make you better. It's just consistency over and over and over and over and over, working out, training, whatever it is, reading, always trying to get better. But I think, some of those things also come from imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And
I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend about it. She said something about imposter syndrome, and I was like, what I have always said since I realized this, I always ask the question, who do you think does not have imposter syndrome? And I know that you have imposter syndrome. There's so many people that 100%. Do. Every one of my high-performing coaching clients have imposter syndrome. And so I asked them the simple question, who do you think does not have imposter syndrome? And my answer is always imposters. But then we went a little bit deeper on that exact subject this weekend, talking about some of my family members. And yes, imposters don't have imposter syndrome, but also people who just don't care. People who are absolutely complacent and they have zero, like they are the definition of mediocrity. They're the definition of complacency. They don't care. They're not trying to get better. They're not trying to prove anything. They just exist. They're just sort of blobs in the world. They have no mission. They have no purpose. They have nothing driving them. And so they don't have imposter syndrome because they're not trying to improve themselves in any way, shape, or form. And so the two people who don't have imposter syndrome are imposters and people who are just complacent. They're just, they don't care. And so I hadn't really put that together until we started, she pulling the string on that. And I was like, oh, you're absolutely right. So I have to amend what I've always said. And so I'll figure out a more simple way to say that. But anyway, it was because of, I think imposter syndrome is super healthy to a point, because it is a thing that drives us. It's a thing that gives us purpose. Like, I'm not good enough yet. You know what? You're never going to be good enough. And that's okay, because that escalator is always going down, and that imposter syndrome keeps us climbing up faster than the escalator is going down.
I like that. I like that analogy of the escalator. Fits in very well with me getting dragged down a hill. And on a side note, I remember, and I can't remember who it was because my head was down, but I remember being told, you know what, if you didn't party so much and go out and like not take things seriously, you would have been able to get up this hill. I'm like, man, I haven't partied in 6 years, man. I have two little kids. I was like, you don't know me. I was like, okay, wait, we'll focus on what's going on here. But to speak to being successful and like the imposter side of things, I listened to Chris Williams' podcast. I don't know if you tune into him. I really like his take on things. And one of the things that he's brought up based on the research, that folks that are hyper successful, whether it's entrepreneurship, athletes, whatever, they all have an inferiority complex. Like they all have an inferiority complex, but they also, on the other side of the coin, believe that they can get anything done, which is two very competitive emotions, but it creates the fire to move forward. And I thought that was really interesting, that you have to kind of have that, if you want to call it imposter syndrome, that inferiority complex to keep you motivated, because now I'm realizing I want to prove to myself. I don't want to prove to others. That's kind of the shift I've had to make, because if I'm trying to do stuff for others, I'm never going to be satisfied. So I want to be at the point where I'm like, no, I did this. This was for me. I really, I'm really thankful for the opportunity, and it's done. Great. What's next? Is kind of the way I'm seeing things a little bit differently now. So to segue into, what your next was when you left the service, you started a company. You started a CBD company. That's a hard one to get into, man. Like, I'll be honest. I didn't get into products because I was like, man, I don't know the first thing about supply chains. Not only that, I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about online sales. I didn't know how to do sales. Then to add in inventory and all that to go with it, I was like, maybe I'll just get started in services first. But you went right in. You did what Navy SEALs do. You went in and you took charge and you started kicking ass and taking names. So what was that process like? You got into a CBD based company. Why? First of all, did you want to sell CBD? And then lastly, like, what was that process like, and how's it been so far?
Yeah. So the way I got into CBD is I was listening to podcasts while I was still on active duty. And this was before CBD was cool or popular or anything else. And I kept hearing people talk about, it helps with stress, anxiety, sleep, pain, all these other things. And I'm like, oh, I've got all of those things right now that I manage, ? With alcohol. Vodka is my medicine of choice. And but because CBD is from the cannabis plant, I was no way I was going to use it because I'm still on active duty. I have top secret clearance. That's a great way to end your time in the military, unnecessarily. And so a little bit earlier than you planned. And so I just I didn't try it. I was still afraid to try it for at least a year after I got out. And then I was in Virginia, going to court, doing some stuff, with my first marriage. And I had lunch with my buddy, Ray Cashcare, former Navy SEAL, who was, in my very first SEAL platoon. And I was like, hey, after lunch, I'm going to see if I can find some CBD. He was like, oh, if you want some, because I think what you have in Virginia is better than what we have in Hawaii. He's like, you want some? I've got some at the house. So we went back to his house. He gave me a bottle. I tried it. I didn't notice anything at all when I took it. Mm-hmm. I took it every day for, 30 days or whatever, the 30-day supply. But what I noticed is when I stopped taking it, is things that stopped bothering me that I didn't really notice started bothering me again. Some pains that I had in my body were not quite as bad, and they started coming back. And I was like, oh, maybe it was the CBD, maybe it was something else. So I tried a different brand. I had similar results. Then fast forward, Empire Business Summit, where I met Bedros and Ray and all this other stuff, and they had like this open, come up on stage and ask us a question and we'll give you an answer. And there was a girl in the CBD industry who was putting CBD into kinesiology tape, and she was like, how do I market this? And I didn't really understand. All I knew was she's in the CBD industry. And so after that Q&A thing, I tracked her down. I'm like, hey, you're the CBD girl, right? And she was like, yeah. Back off, weirdo. I'm like, sorry. I'm like, I want to be in CBD. And really, I wanted her to hire me because I'm still looking for my mission and my purpose and all that other stuff. And she was like, well, why don't you just start your own CBD company? I said, I don't know how to do that. And she said, you are a Navy SEAL. You can figure it out. So I politely asked her for my man card back. And I went home, not to give that thing up again, and started and Googled how to start a CBD company. I knew nothing about products or services or anything else. I knew I thought maybe I wanted to be in products because, you can, if you set up some sort of subscription model, people really like your thing, you continue to buy it. And I knew things that I continue to buy every day because I like them. Mm-hmm. Also kind of some of the marketing pieces of it, but I knew nothing about any of that. And I'm just like, let's go, let's figure it out. And, but it was interesting that this girl had who didn't know me from anybody, but she had more confidence in me than I had in my own self to start my own company. And I was like, that was weird. That seemed very weird. And then Bedros and then all the other things. And so one of the things that they talked about at that Empire Business Summit was, you need to have everybody wants to make a bunch of money with business and all this other stuff, entrepreneurship, but you need to have something that's bigger than you. Why are you really around? Bedros gives millions of dollars to Shriners Children's Hospital and all this other stuff. And so I'm like, what do I want? What do I want from this? Well, CBD helped me in an extremely positive way, helped change my quality of life significantly. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can help other veterans and first responders. And so our mission at Naked Warrior Recovery is 22-0. 22 veterans take their lives every single day. So our mission is to eliminate veteran suicide. And so that's the path that I'm on. I learn from failure, and I've failed a lot of times in this business, in the CBD realm. I'm actually being sued right now by a company that is accusing me for trademark infringement, and they're accusing me for using the word naked. They own a bunch of trademarks with the word naked in the supplement world, and I'm like, I'm not a supplement company. I'm a CBD company. I'm a cannabis company. But I also use the word naked for mindset coaching and things like that, which was, my presentation at BK Live. And they're like, I'm in a lawsuit. And one of the things about that is I have the opportunity to either say on the mindset side, I can say either I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources or whatever to go deal with this multi-million-dollar company that's trying to sue me. Or I can say, I'm grateful for the opportunity of getting sued so I can learn more about myself, more about the company, more about the process, so I can go and help other people when this happens to them. And the other thing is, if you're not getting sued, there's no lawsuit. Like you're not working hard enough. You're not trying hard enough. You're not making enough noise. You know?
You're not going.
And I was like,
enough.
I must be doing something right then. Like that's adversity. Like
if you weren't a threat, they wouldn't be suing you. Right. Like if you were just like a solopreneur in your basement, putting gummies in a container and sending them out to your friends and family, making a few $100 a month, they'd be like, no big deal. But in your case, clearly you're making waves. For the individual that's kind of, dipping their toes in like the CBD world, let's say, typical injuries and the stuff that we deal with in the veteran community, right? Like mild traumatic brain injuries is one of them. Post-traumatic stress, chronic pain. Why should, if, I'm looking at CBD as a way to kind of start helping myself out? Because I'll be honest, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Like I had really big success with CBD, and, everybody here in Canada, if you're a troop, you're a veteran, you can get it paid for by our VA. So I started. I'm
actually the guy who has the company that supplies it is one of my coaching clients.
Okay.
The guy who has the contract with the government that provides cannabis to veterans is one of my coaching clients.
Awesome. Yeah. So in my opinion, there's a big benefit, but for somebody that's kind of coming to this without much context, what can they expect, especially if they have a host of, injuries and comorbidities by, getting started with CBD, and then how does it fit into like a bigger recovery process? Let's just say self-care process. And if you could explain kind of all the things that you do over and above CBD that helps you, stay fit and stay, very active, clearly, so that folks can start borrowing from your protocol.
Sure. So on the CBD side, I'm going to say there's 3 different versions of CBD. So you have a CBD isolate, which is the lowest quality CBD in my opinion. And I also have to say this is not medical advice. I just have to caveat that. I'm not a medical professional. This is not medical advice. However, I do a lot of research. So the 3 main types of CBD. You have a CBD isolate, which is just that CBD molecule that they extract from the cannabis plant. They extract the oil out, and then they just extract that molecule CBD, turns into a white powder. They add it to an MCT oil or an olive oil or something, and then you take that. And it's usually an isolate because it'll say like 60,000 milligrams of CBD, and so we don't need that much. Your body can't handle it. Then there's a broad spectrum, which is most of my products. So full spectrum and broad spectrum, you extract all the minor cannabinoids and terpenes. Terpenes are essential oils from the cannabis plant, and there's over 120 minor cannabinoids and terpenes in the cannabis plant. And so to include CBD, THC, CBG, CBN, all these other molecules. So if you're going to take CBD, I would say number 1, make sure that it has a independent lab third-party testing done to it, so it doesn't. So you're actually getting what you are supposed to be getting, and you're not getting a bunch of crap. Because when CBD originally became legal, there was a bunch of crap out on the market. Cannabis plant is awesome because it extracts all the good stuff out of the soil, but it also extracts all the bad stuff out of the soil. So if there's a lot of pesticides and herbicides and mold and heavy metals and stuff in the soil, then that's going to go into the plant, and then you're going to put it in your body. So you make sure it's from a good source. All of our oils are USDA certified organic, but not all products are USDA certified organic, just because we can't control all the stuff. If it's a gummy or something else, we can't control all of that. So on the CBD side, why it's good for you, and there's still a ton of research to be done, because it was, cannabis was illegal around the world for, a century, but it was used as medicine for over 1,000 years prior to that. So it does help with stress. It does help with anxiety. It does help with mild traumatic brain injury. And the reason that it does is because of a couple of the essential oils, the terpenes that are in the cannabis plant. One is called limonene, and one is called pinene, like the essential oil from a lemon, essential oil from like a pine tree, like pine needles. You go into a pine forest and you kind of brush against them, and you can smell that smell. So that's the essential oils. And so those actually help with neuroplasticity in the brain. And so taking CBD, a full or broad spectrum that has those molecules in it or those essential oils in it, will help with the neuroplasticity, which will help with those traumatic brain injuries, helping your brain to create new neural pathways when you have, you know, these blasts or these traumatic brain injuries, to help you rewire your brain to go in the direction that it needs to go. And so that's, you know, on the CBD side, that's, you know, I use it for, you know, pain. I use it for sleep. I use it for recovery. Topical. I also use a small amount of THC, which has actually been a game changer. You know, in the US, we have the Farm Bill, and so it has to be 0.3% or less THC in the dried weight of the product. And so I have some products, some gummies that have that. You know, they give you like a little bit of a buzz, kind of a booze buzz, but you've no hangover, no nothing. Like I take those about an hour before I want to go to bed, and I get amazing sleep. My brain turns off like it's supposed to, which I was used to use alcohol to turn it down. Yeah. So now I get the same kind of effect, but I'm like, boom, okay, it's time to go to bed. And I just sleep really well. I wake up and I'm like ready to attack the day. Other things that I use a low dose of TRT. And, you know, I mentioned that, you know, in the military, and I just went to the VA last week or week before, you know, they were looking at my, you know, my blood and all this other stuff, like, you know, what it was and what it is now and all these other things. And they're like, oh, your testosterone is fine. Well, the spectrum for testosterone in men is gigantic. It's like, you know, it's a healthy man, young, mid 20s is, you know, testosterone is probably, at least should be probably in the 900 plus
like
range.
1,000, yeah.
Mine was in the 250, like 255 range.
Really?
Well, that's still normal,
but not.
No, it's not. But it's still normal on that spectrum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like 1,000 or 1,200 down to 250, and I was just above the 250. So they're like, no, you're not a candidate for it because of this. Well, I was lethargic. I was like brain fog. I was like all these other things. And so I had a buddy that introduced me to a company. It was kind of they were just kind of getting started. And now I do some advising for that company and a little bit of coaching for them. And I just started taking a very low dose of TRT, like once or twice a week. I'm not that good at taking it. And I took, some other like magnesium and, you know, vitamin D and some thyroid stuff and whatever, but it's a huge game changer. And I believe my testosterone was like super freaking low back in my 40s, but I was also not brave enough to ask for help. That was one of the biggest things that I've discovered, is being brave enough to ask for help, which I still struggle with. But, you know, again, going back to that imposter syndrome, if I'm like asking for help, then I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I also look at, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, especially coming from somebody like yourself, like somebody that is listening right now, that is thinking, man, like I shouldn't go. Like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But, you know, we're listening to you, Navy SEAL, decorated, that is going through the same thing in terms of, man, my testosterone's low. I don't want to get help. We're all in that same boat, but it just goes to show that, you know, all you need to do is actually just reach out. You just need to reach out. Yeah. You just need to say, hey, man, like, I don't think this is good. What do I do next? And I love the fact that, you know, you took a strategy towards it, because ultimately, from what I'm hearing, like, you want to thrive. You want to be good. You want to be able to be there, you know, for your family. You want to be able to be a good entrepreneur.
Absolutely optimal from now until the day I die. I do not care.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone thinks. Tim Grover wrote a book, and maybe you read it. It's either Winning or what was the other one? Relentless. One of those two. And he talks about flexing your id-gaf muscle. Id-gaf is I don't give a fuck.
Okay. Yeah.
And so once I realized that, like, give less fucks. Mm-hmm. Flex your id-gaf muscle. Like, if you go on social media, if you go on the project website, if you go on mine, post I'm tagged in, there's just some nasty people out there who just are keyboard warriors, and they're like, oh, what, you know, let's say TRT, for example. Oh, you're on steroids, you're on this, you're on that. I'm like, I'm on such a low dose. I'm just optimizing what normal is supposed to look like. I'm not doing super physiological anything. I'm not trying to get big. I'm like, right now, because of my diet and what I eat, and you can jam. I mean, Bedros is a great example. He's like, dude, I was using like 5 times what I use now. And I was fat and I was out of shape and I was like, I didn't anything.
Right.
And
I
now,
saw that
like,
post.
I know what his protocol is. And it's like, he's more than me, but it's like 1/5 of what he used to do. And he was doing like some heavy stuff once upon a time. And it's like, you eat right, you work out, you stay focused. What do you want to do? And you focus on those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just a supplement at the end of the day. Creatine, a little bit of TRT. I'm not trying to do super physiological anything. I'm just trying to recover as quickly and easily as I can so I can get back after it and keep achieving as high a performance as possible. And I think this is the first time I've ever really talked about TRT on a podcast.
Which is great because, you know, within our veteran community, the evidence is very clear. We suffer, men suffer at much higher rates from low testosterone than the general population. Even though the trend is really starting to crater for men just in general, ours is even worse. Now, the compounding factors are like toxic exposure, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, obesity. These are all things that just sleep deprivation is another one. Yeah. The fact that you're going out and getting treatment for a chronic condition, what other chronic condition would be like, oh, well, you know, that's not fair. You're getting treatment for diabetes or you're getting treatment for cancer. How dare you? It doesn't make any sense. You are getting treated for something like low testosterone, which hormonally, that's our dominant sex hormone. If it's not tracking, if it's not optimal, you're not optimal. So, you know, the message of like, well, that's not fair, that's cheating is moot. You know, it's moot. You're taking care of yourself with a hormone because a lot of us, and you might have, you know, I don't know, it could be because of military service. It might just be because of age. Who knows? But either way, there needs to be a supplementation. And that's the route I'm going down to. You said 250. I got mine checked about 6 months ago and it was hovering around 300. And for me, who works out, eats well, sleeps, that was a kind of a warning bell. My doctor didn't give two shits.
I would for sure. I would for sure be supplementing.
I was like, no, I'm like, that needs to be higher, man. He's like, nah, you're fine. What about your cholesterol though? Your LDL is slightly higher. I think you should put you on Lipitor. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Do not.
So it's funny how we.
No, oh my God,
it's going to crush my testosterone even more. So it's good to hear, you know, somebody like yourself talking about something like TRT, you know, in a more kind of open conversational type way, because I think that there's that taboo that, oh, you're taking steroids. And I encourage, you know, any guy that's listening right now, go do your blood work, go see what your free testosterone is. And, you know, anecdotally, like a good buddy of mine got his tested, you know, he's been on antidepressants and, you know, the whole gamut of things that can be related to low testosterone, brain fog. And his testosterone was like non-existent. I'm like, well, dude, if you dial that in, maybe you don't need all that other bullshit that they've been feeding us for the last like 10 years. Just go get your bloods checked, you know, and it's a lot cheaper. And it's I would say it's a lot safer protocol. Again, not medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but I think that's great. And as part of a recovery protocol, you know, ultimately you're in control of your own recovery protocol and what you do to maintain yourself. You know, CBD, TRT, and all the other things. Like, there's a million different things you can do. But the fact that you just take care of yourself is great.
Into peptides right now, also, just to like
a juicy topic that I know nothing about, but I'm super curious about. So that's really cool.
I'm delving into it. I'm learning a little bit. I took my first dose of peptides this morning, and I was a little scared to get on here because I worked out, and it was like, you know, on the thing, it's like. You know, I'm training for Mount Kilimanjaro and that ultra marathon. So I need to like, I'm trying to optimize as much as possible. And, you know, it's like, they're like, okay, take this before your workout, but make sure you have some carbs and whatever, so you don't pass out. And I'm like, I'm terrified of like I was like, before we got on, I was like, I'm a little bit lightheaded because I worked out a little bit this morning. And I'm like, am I going to pass out during the podcast? That could be embarrassing for sure.
Will, you still there? Dude, you doing all right? Oh, shit.
Now you took my soul on the podcast.
You're in my world now, Will. I got you so nervous you passed out. There we go. Right. Tit for tat.
But yeah, so I'm delving into that world, really mostly on the recovery side, like the body healing side. So BPC 157, which the FDA just reclassified, so it's harder to get, and there's some other stuff going on. But you know, I think big pharma out there is like, they're combating like all of these sort of more natural therapies
Mhm.
because that dips into their profit margins, and they want us to be sick and lazy and mediocre and whatever. And I absolutely not. I want to be optimal, and I want to perform as high as I can and bring as much good to the world as I possibly can. And this is my new mission in life, my new purpose, my new, like, what I do, why I'm here. This is why I was built.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on your Get Naked protocol, which is, never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose fears, and do the work. But
yes, sir.
Like that encompasses kind of what you're talking about here. Like that's your new mission. And like if folks get behind anything that's just not the status quo, right? Go out, go for a walk, go do anything other than essentially what the government tells you to do. Yes. You'll be a million times better than status quo. And, I say, pay the farm now or pay the farm later. I borrowed it from some guy in CrossFit from years ago, but you spell farm PHARM, because ultimately, if you're not taking care of yourself now, you're going to be beholden. You're going to be like a slave to the companies that want you sick and want you dead. And like, there's a whole other issue here. And we're seeing it here in Canada. I don't know how much you're seeing it in the States. Actions speak louder than words, and the actions here make it very clear that they want us gone, man. They don't want us around. Like they are clearly trying to kill us. And once I accepted that, hey, they're not trying to help. No, they're trying to get rid of us. Then I lost a lot of my kind of like anger around it, because then that makes sense. That's why they're offering us, no, I'm going off topic here, but where they're offering us a medical assisted dying here in Canada, which is freaking insane to the veteran population. That's why they're pumping us full of pills and opioids. Because if you wanted somebody to get better and you wanted somebody to be healthy, especially those that served, you'd bring in all the best experts. You'd have the conversations. You'd be like, okay, well, clearly there's a big metric that's not changing. And we talked about it just briefly, but the 22 suicides a day, like that's an American statistic, but we have, proportionally similar numbers. Well, if everything that you're doing, that you're bringing to bear, is not changing that number, okay, well then clearly what you're doing is not working. So what do we have to do in order to fix that? And clearly you're in the space. You want folks to get better and healthier, and you're doing it through your entrepreneurship and getting on podcasts. And I'm trying to promote messages like yourself to get out to the masses as much as possible, that there is a way forward that isn't just going to the VA and popping some pills and hoping that you get better by sitting at home and listening to what they have to say. So I want to wrap up.
You guys do it a little bit better than we do on some of it, because my buddy who has that company that helps veterans, like provides cannabis, CBD, THC, whatever the thing is. But they also have like, I don't know, he kind of just, they're like not a spa, but like kind of these VFW sort of facilities where there's doctors, there's yoga, there's other things, places you can bring your family for barbecues and things like that. I know they're around the country. I don't know a whole lot about him, and he's trying to start another thing to help with specifically men's health and things like that, sexual function and all these other things. I'm certainly behind him and trying to what can I do to support you? How can I, get the word out? How can I get more people to your clinics to grow the message? So I think on that side, Canada is doing a little bit of a better job, but I don't know that they're doing much more. I think everything else is like, rough. And he's in the same boat. He's like, the political climate and all the other stuff that goes on there. It's like, he's certainly not happy with it. But he's like, this one piece of it, they do really well. Mm-hmm. But it's still not enough. There's still so much more. And so we have a lot to learn here in the US on that side of it. And I know there's a push to make it better, but there's still a whole lot that needs to be done.
I agree. To wrap up, Will, I think we barely scratched the surface here. You're such an interesting dude. You got a lot of ground to cover. One thing that really piqued my interest, and maybe we can just wrap it up with this. You were on James Whitaker's podcast. So I listened to it. It was a great podcast. You talked about earning your trident. I thought that was a pretty novel concept. It seems to kind of fit in with like Stoic philosophy. So what does that essentially mean? If you can wrap it up with some last thoughts too, I think that'd be a great way to end our conversation.
Sure. We have a saying in the SEAL teams as part of our ethos, is that you have to earn your trident every day. The trident is that gold shiny pin that we wear on our uniform. It's the eagle, an anchor, trident, kind of Neptune style, and then a musket. And it describes sea, air, and land. And one of the things that we do in the SEAL teams is, one of the things we talk about is you have to earn that every single day. Just because you went to BUDS, just because you went to, you did a deployment, just because you got an award, just because you did something, so what? That was yesterday. No one cares what you did yesterday. No one cares that you graduated SEAL training. No one cares that you were the top of the class. No one cares that you were the bottom of the class. You know what they care about? They care about what are you doing for the team today, which was a great thing being in a leadership position in the SEAL teams. My job is to hold everyone else accountable, but their job is to hold me accountable as well. Mm-hmm. So if I showed up and I wasn't performing at my best, and we know what our best is, and our team knows what our best is, we have that kind of intimate relationship. If I'm not performing my best and I show up and I'm kind of dragging ass or whatever, and my guys don't call me out on it, then I'm going to hammer them later because that's their job, their responsibility. Like, we're all responsible for one another. We're responsible for our own actions, but we're responsible for everyone else. So that's, that's part of, being in the right team, having the right people around you. Your job, you can't, that's part of being mediocre. If you're just like, okay, I did a great job 6 years ago. I earned dessert 6 years ago. And every day you're like, I earned dessert yesterday and the day before and the day before. And 6 years ago, I'm still eating dessert. Brother, you earned it 6 years ago. You didn't earn it for the last, 5 years and, 364 days. So stop eating dessert and start earning it again. You got 5 years of work to do. So earning your trident is about not focusing on instant gratification. We all focus on instant gratification. Earning your trident is doing those small victories, doing those small wins, showing up and not being complacent. It's showing up and doing those, training for those artificial hardships. It's not worrying about what you did yesterday, because, we also say the only easy day was yesterday. So who cares what you did yesterday? What are you doing today? What are you doing today? Earn your trident, earn your keep, earn your purpose, earn whatever the thing is that you want to do. Earn that every single day, and then your life will be good. Embrace those hardships, because if you want to just have a mediocre life, then I challenge you to kill that mediocrity.
I love it, man.
Your life will be so much better.
That's one thing that I realized years ago, and why I'm literally here kind of talking to you and doing podcasting and stuff, is that there was this thing inside me that was screaming to do something different when I was teaching high school. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a teacher, but there was something that was not in line with what I wanted to do. And had I suppressed that, I know I'd be a miserable piece of shit right now, because mediocrity, you could be, don't get me wrong, there's some awesome teachers and that's what they love to do and they crush it. And I would not consider them mediocre.
No, not at all.
However, for me, it just wasn't the right fit. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, man, what am I meant to do? Especially after you've gotten out of the military, right? It's confusing. It's hard to redefine the mission, the purpose. It's great to see that, you've established that purpose, that mission, and you're looking to give back to the community as well too, and earning that trident. Yeah, it's not resting on your laurels. So what is basically the expression? Like, so what? Like, you were a SEAL. Like, so what? Yeah. You deployed. So what? At face value, when you're talking to clients, when you're talking to potential investors. Okay, cool. You're like, don't get me wrong. That's cool. But is your business rock solid? Are your numbers good?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what matters now. And
if you just look at, with businesses, you look, okay, what was last year's quarter? No one cares about that. What's today's earnings?
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. So, Will, let's start with where can folks find you, and what do you have on the agenda where folks can tune in?
So I would say go to 5sealsecrets.com, the number 5 seal secrets, like Navy SEAL, SEAL secrets.com. Put your name, email in there. I'll, send you the my Get Naked philosophy. And, it's 5 secrets to help you think like a Navy SEAL. This is the presentation that I give from stage all over the world. Let's see where else. You can find me on Instagram, william.r.branum on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and all the other platforms. Pretty easy to Google, like you were saying earlier. If you're interested in CBD in the United States, it's the website is nw-recovery.com, nw-recovery.com, or Naked Warrior Recovery.com. I changed it from Naked Warrior Recovery to NW-Recovery because maybe people didn't want to write naked in their search engine. Not sure why, but I still have that website just in case. Yeah, I think, I also have a podcast. It's called the Navy SEAL Mindset. I have not interviewed anyone on there yet. However, I have a few interviews on there. But mostly it's just me getting on here and talking about something Navy SEAL mindset, something that's resonating with me today, and just sharing my experiences there, sharing my thoughts. And, hopefully it's helpful to the people who are listening.
Love it. Will, you're prolific on the interwebs, on other people's podcasts. So I'm very confident that your podcast is going to take off as well, considering that you're such a good speaker. Like, judging by what I saw you doing on stage, I'm really excited to see what's coming down the pipe in the future for you. So I really,
thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about your past and what you're up to these days, and talking about your company and all the awesome things that you're up to. It's really an honor to be able to talk to folks like yourself on this show that really was just kind of a dream that kind of blossomed into something that's been pretty cool for me and the folks that are listening. I'm always very appreciative of. So, Will, thanks again for your time. And folks, don't forget, train hard, fight easy. I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Fellas, bring it in. Nice and tight. Bring it in. Nice and tight. We need to talk about your... All right, seriously. We need to talk about something that most of us don't want to talk about. That's why I put on my nice blue dress shirt to bring a bit of seriousness to an often hilarious topic. But your sexual health is no joke. Seriously, though, sexual health needs a lot more attention than it's been given. Let me go over a few things here. Research has shown that regular sex, what's 1 to 2 times per week, can reduce the risk of cardiovascular mortality by 50%. Bring that one to your wife right now. Lower the risk of prostate cancer by 33% and reinvigorate your mind and body. The problem is 40% of men in their 40s, 50% of men in their 50s, and 60% of men in their 60s experience some form of erectile dysfunction. This is even worse in the veteran community. On top of all this, erectile dysfunction is correlated with a future cardiovascular event and is an early warning sign of a future issue. This is why Dr. Elliot, board certified urologist and friend of the podcast, has created this one of a kind, first in its category, revolutionary device called the Firm Tech Ring. This high-speed tech for your dick will give you real-time data and allow you to see how many nocturnal erections you get every night, which can be a great bit of data that you can bring to your doctor for a future conversation. Not only that, this data could literally save your life. I'm all about improving the health and lives of the veteran community. And that's why I've paired up with Dr. Elliot Justin to provide you with a 10% discount if you head to the link that's here in the description to get yourself your first Firm Tech Ring if you use the code DMorrow at checkout. So head to the link in the description and start tracking so that you can start banging. All right, brother. So go do what you got to do and be one of the first to bring a whole new meaning to being hard to kill.